Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee. We are meeting at Gloucester High School Library at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester. As the recent amendments to the open meeting law allows, the school committee will continue to hold meetings remotely. Adequate alternative access to the meeting is provided through the Zoom link below. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. We're going to call this meeting to order and make state the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful. And we will do the roll call as to who's here. We'll start with Roberta.
Brenda Easton, the Preliminary Services. Amy Pascal, Assistant Superintendent.
And Mama Superintendent.
Keith Minio, School Committee.
Melissa Prince, School Committee. Kathy Clancy, School Committee.
Samantha Watson, School Committee.
William Melvin, School Committee.
Greg Berga, Mayor and School Committee.
Maria Puglisi, Recording Secretary.
So we will be going into executive session and we will come back out to continue with our open session business. I move that we enter executive session pursuant to executive session purpose 3 of Mass General Law 39, Section 23B, to discuss collective bargaining with the Gloucester Association of Educational Support Paraprofessionals, not the food service, we're done with that, and Teamsters transportation workers, and I said, well, second. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince. Yeah. Mayor Berger,
Yes.
Ms. Watson. Yes. Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
And Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
You bet.
Everybody needs to log out of this meeting. Okay, Brian.
Are you having trouble? We are back in session. This is a continuing meeting of the Gloucester School Committee on Wednesday, June 28, 2023. And I ask that you stand and join me to the salute. Thank you. With liberty and justice for all. First order of business, next order of business is oral communications. The public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. Person speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communication to the recording secretary. If there is anyone in attendance that would like to address the full committee, now is your opportunity. Okay, seeing we will move on to recognitions. Anybody have any recognitions? We haven't had school since the last meeting.
No recognition yet, I don't think, because some, as it will report tonight, our summer learning program are just getting going. Our kids haven't done anything fabulous yet, but they will.
And we do not have our student advisory council. They will be with us when we. Next item is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? I move that we approve the consent agenda. Second. Okay, roll call vote, Maria, please.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Verda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy,
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
Okay, next item of business is deliberations on education issued in the superintendent. Number 2.
Let's see here. I think what we're gonna do is go through, first of all, hello everyone, good evening, good to see everybody. Sorry about the weather we're having. So we have a million of year super report. Lynn Beatty is on remote, Kate Robertson is here. Then we also have final budget presentation. I have updates on, we have some updates on sort of summer, some summer programs that are going on, as well as capital projects that are going on. And to give you an update on JROTC, and then we also have the then in terms of some actions about my evaluation, and then also the disposition of the items at the school. So I think we're going to start with student learning update, and then go to the budget. Essentially, then I'll go to these other pieces. So Lynn Beatty is remote from, she's hoping to be at the Vineyard, but not. I think in Framingham, which is a close second. And then Kate Robertson is here as well.
So similar.
And there's a presentation in your packet, but then also Amy Pascal will show it on the
I
screen.
need to post in. Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you tonight. Thanks for having us. Kate and I are pretty excited to present our learning report. So I'll hold on till Amy has the screen up and we'll go from there. Okay, so what you see before you is some of the examples of student work that were displayed on our Evening of Excellence this year. This is a night that we brought back last year after COVID, and it's 2 years in a row, very successful. We changed it up and had kids lead their families through all of the displays in classrooms. There were a bunch of interactive things, as well as displays all over the building. So we thought this was a nice entry to the report. Just as a refresher, these are this past year's school focus areas. We had 3: improving student learning, student engagement, and professional collaboration. And what you'll see in the learning report today is some of our work and the outcomes that we accomplished this year. So we're going to start with student engagement, which we haven't started with before. This data that we have collected is based on the O'Malley Views of Climate and Learning, the VOCAL survey. This is the same survey that the state gives to students at the end of the 8th grade MCAS. And I think I may have mentioned before that we felt that it made sense to use the same survey throughout to see how we're doing locally and in all 3 grades. So if there are 3 categories: engagement, environment, and safety, and I'll give you, these are just some highlights from each of these categories, things that I felt were pretty meaningful to show. I used as a scale, just so you know, above 70% I considered to be green, between 50 and 70% I considered to be yellow, and below 50% I considered to be red. That's a pretty typical scale when we work with the state. That's usually how they break it down. So these are the question numbers, just so you know, for my own reference. So we've got a few really nice high points. Kids have a choice in how they show their learning. At 76%, how teachers use open-ended questions that make students think of many possible answers. We want that open-ended questioning going on at 82%. The next one is one of the ones that we see as a red flag, both visually in the red and just because it's a concerning one. And this is my classmates behave the way my teachers want them to. And you'll see a little trend around that this is obviously something we'll be addressing moving forward. We've got some really nice responses around differences. Adults working at O'Malley treating all students respectfully, regardless of race, culture, family, income, religion, sex, or sexual orientation at 88%. Students are being open to having friends from different backgrounds at 93%, and teachers promoting respect among students at 87%. Unfortunately, we then dipped down a bit with students' respect for one another at 67%. The questions about differences, there are several more questions that all were also a nice high rating for us. So that was good information to see. From the environment, it's instructional, mental health, and discipline included in this category. We see that teachers are setting high expectations and that they believe all students can do well in their learning, both of those at 89% from all 3 grade levels. And the things that I'm learning in school are relevant or important to me is one that we will need to work on, making those connections to what students do at home or outside of school and how what they're doing in classrooms relates to that. The next 3 are related to, the next 2 are related to emotional connection. If I need help with my emotions, effective help is available. That's at almost 80%, at 78. And our guidance council, our school offering guidance to students on how to mediate conflicts by themselves at 80%. Then the next one has to do with rules and discipline. School staff are consistent when enforcing school rules, and that's at 86%, which, you know, I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but that's a nice solid response there. And then students have a voice in deciding school rules. Clearly, we have some significant work still to do with that, despite some of the efforts we put in this year. And then lastly is safety. And this is bullying, cyberbullying, emotional safety, and physical safety. The first question, we want to be low, and it's not as low as we would like it to be. Students have spread rumors about me more than once on social media. So this percentage point is reversed. If I tell a teacher or other adult that someone's being bullied, the teacher or adult will do something to help at 77%. That's one, again, I'd like to see a little bit higher. Some of this is perception, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Students at school try to stop bullying when they see it happened. This one, unfortunately, is not surprising to me, and it should be much higher. That's a place in our bullying and bullying prevention work that we need to encourage students to be allies and be upstanders. The next couple of teachers don't let students pick on each other, or students in class or hallways at 76%, and teachers, students, and the principal and assistant principals work together to prevent bullying at 79%. Those are nice solid responses. And then finally, students will help other students if they're upset, even if they're not close friends, only at 55%. So we have a little bit of a trend here with lack of respect, not necessarily reaching out to help, that we would like to shift. So out of those three categories, we've got quite a few things in our plan for next year. We talked about this in detail when we met just a few weeks ago, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but we do have the social emotional learning tier 1 instruction coming in, our new partnership services to reorganize special ed. And then we're going to be continuing to analyze and respond to the climate survey data. And this survey will be given fall, winter, and spring next year so that we can really respond more in time with when we get the results. We are going to need to work on continuing opportunities for student voice and opportunities for decision making. I think last time we met, we talked about, and Jeff talked quite a bit about the work that's being done in community. We did a huge number of things comparatively this year with students working on, you know, designing the rules and guidelines for dances, having input into curriculum decisions around the English curriculum. But clearly we need to drill down into this to see what students would consider to be opportunities that they would value as voice as well. We have more sales work coming in on the agenda for next year, and then as possible, increased transparency relating to our actions that are taken in response to hurtful behavior. Some of the struggles that everyone has around bully prevention curriculum and responses to bullying reports and reports of any kind of hurtful behavior is that we can't really share what we do. So, you know, the question is, how do we figure out how to help kids feel heard and how to help kids see that actions have been taken, even when sometimes those actions don't bring to fruition the change in behavior that we're looking for. And we don't want them to write it off. So in other words, you know, if they make a report and we take action and the behavior doesn't change, we still need students to understand that they need to come back to us and say, hey, you know, I reported this already and it's still not changing, so that then the staff can take further steps. You know, we don't always hit it right perfectly the first try when we take actions and consequences. We try to do restorative work. We try to have community response that's appropriate to the action. And, you know, sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss, and some students don't necessarily get the message from those first responses. So we want to make sure that we're increasing that. For student, is other questions on any of that before we move to student learning?
Go ahead, Melissa. Just a quick question. Do we do, I haven't did before, do we continue to do student seminars on bullying, like bringing in a professional, talking with the kids in the auditorium?
We haven't done anything in the auditorium recently. We did a sales assembly, which is, you know, positive approach, not related specifically to the law. The bullying lessons have been done in advisory blocks. So I think, it's more consistency with how we do that, and then possibly bringing back the bullying presentations. We've been talking about inviting the assistant, the assistant district attorney in. And they have a presentation that they do for kids and families. We brought in Katie Greer to work with families on more along the lines of social media and some cyberbullying stuff last year. But we haven't done like whole school assemblies and things like that recently. So
I
it's,
only ask because if there's one complaint that I get from parents, it's the bullying at the
Yep.
14-year age
Mhm.
level, most especially 13, 14, which happens to be O'Malley,
Yeah.
usually. And I just think in the past, I mean, even in other school districts, they used to bring in professionals. I think one group was parents of a daughter that committed suicide because of bullying. I forget the name of the program.
Mm.
But they showed a lot of success, especially having all the kids in one room while they're talking about it, as opposed to breaking down in groups and not seeing the reaction of everyone. I just was curious why we haven't done that unless the answer is COVID. Then I get it.
well,
Auditorium.
go ahead.
Well, having them all in the auditorium in years past, probably in the recent past would have been COVID, but that's not necessarily this year. We're
Yeah.
getting back to.
Yeah, there's also the question of kids can hide in the auditorium. What I mean by that is they don't necessarily, they can tune out a lot more easily than when we do it in advisory. You've got a group of kids that's 20 or so, or even less. So there's an interactive portion of it that intends to get them engaged in the content.
Yeah, I see
I
both
don't think it
happening,
needs to be
not
one
one
or
or
the
the other.
other. Yeah, I think it makes sense to, now that we are out of COVID, and like I said, we did bring in somebody that Katie Greer worked with both kids and families last year. And then we had the police department do something for us this year, but we would like to bring in the district attorney's office to do their presentation that's really targeted at this. So one of the biggest pieces is that.
Official, like as like a police officer, like bringing in someone that they can relate to in an age group or something. Just seems to me, I mean, to me, O'Malley's struggled in the past with its reputation, not necessarily because of test scores, but it's the bullying, it's that persona that it's happening worse than it is. And I just feel like we're so focused on the social and emotional, which we should be, and the scoring and things like that. I just think if we can really make this topic a priority over the next year or so and really bring in someone that's can influence the kids other than someone in a uniform. It just seems to me that there's more work that can be done.
That's
And with that,
definitely possible. I think one of the things that we need to make sure that we remember on this is that most of the behavior that's reported as bullying is not. So that's the other piece that impacts
Right.
reputation. So people.
we need a clear definition of bullying. Yeah.
Like any little thing, two kids going at each other and fighting all the time and calling each other names is not bullying.
Right.
But the community labels it as bullying. So,
Right.
the reputation, both among how the kids feel about it and, from families, is worse than when we do investigations. We're not coming up with those percentages because there are the certain very specific criteria for what is bullying and
And then the outcome to that is, we reported it, but nothing was done about it, and nothing was done because it doesn't meet the definition of bullying that the school is going by. However, the families don't understand that. So to me, there's a lot of work that needs to be done
What bullying.
on that topic, bringing in the community, right? You
right.
know,
There's
talk
also
about
the
anxiety, let's talk about bullying that leads to anxiety.
right. And there's also the fact that people simply don't agree. Like when we go back, the APs are really good about following up with families when they've made a report of hurtful behavior and going back and saying, here's what it is, here's what we did. People don't necessarily like the responses. So, kids in middle school are going to do hurtful things. Their job to some extent as middle school kids is to make mistakes, and they're impulsive. And we want them to be able to work together to do conflict resolution. So some of the other pieces that are on the docket for next year, bringing in the ADL for No Place for Hate. And the second part of it is bringing in the peer mediation, the ADL World of Difference peer mediation training that we're doing. So I think all of these things combined are going to be helpful to changing the course. It's really understanding what we're talking about, understanding how to take ownership of it. The survey results that I showed where kids don't step up and help each other, kids don't help each other when they're upset, those percentages being low, like that's, the bullying aside, that empathy for the community, having a place as a community member is really important in order to make change on any of this.
Thank you.
So when I look at data, especially around the safety piece, I don't see this sort of as just an O'Malley problem. I would sort of look at this as like, are we sharing this data with elementary schools, and what can we do differently in elementary schools to sort of start the conversation earlier around, what do you do when you see something bullying? I'm not saying it's not happening, but my hope is that you take this data and say, hey, elementary school principals, like, what are we doing? Is there anything else that we can be doing differently on that level to start that process sooner? It's a hard thing to do, like dealing with conflict. It's something adults don't even know how to do typically. And so the sooner that we start teaching that, the better. So it's more just sort of a comment around like, I hope that we take this and have some more meaningful conversations sort of on the elementary school level, in addition to O'Malley.
Great. Thanks.
You have a question?
About the one slide with environment under discipline, if you could go back to your environment slide. What's that?
Yep.
Oh, are you controlling that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I took it up.
Yeah, environment. My question's on 2 bullet points at the bottom there, I think related to discipline. Opportunity for students to, wait, let's see, I wrote my notes kind of crassly here. Deciding school rules was one of them. What does that look like? And what are they deciding on?
Well, I mean, it's the question, do you mean what does the question ask?
What does that look like in practice at the school?
What rules are they making?
Well, that's part of the issue, I think. It's a question that needs drilling down into. So kids have opportunities around a variety of things, when they set classroom parameters at the beginning of the year, what are our norms for how we're going to act in classrooms? That's between them and the teachers. So that's a place that they might not recognize. They're also, this year, when we brought dances back and opened up dances, the kids got together, at a group of kids come together and determine what the guidelines and rules needed to be for that. So that's a place where it comes up. I think one of the biggest places where kids don't feel like they have a voice are with things like the cell phone policy and appropriate dress. So those are the places where we have constant struggles with regard to kids voicing that they don't like those rules. Those rules, both of the times those rules were revised in recent years, there were student groups involved to give their voice into the process. How far you'll ever get with that, I'm not really sure. I don't know how many kids would ever say that they like the cell phone policy. So, there's a piece of this that, again, we need to drill down into it. We have a question that students are obviously saying they don't feel like they have a share in. So then the question is, what would it look like for them to have that participation that they're hoping for? And is it possible? Certain things.
From what I get from the 43% is that they recognize that they're not the ones deciding the rules. Why is that question even there? Why would you put it on the kids to decide these things? It's one thing to have their input and get their feelings on it and make decisions as administrators for the rules, but
I think that
suggest that they have a decision in how the rules are applied is a whole nother matter.
I think just what you just said, the question, we have a voice to decide school. You said have input.
Right, no, I'm saying that would be appropriate to express their opinions on these things.
That's what the question's asking.
Deciding a voice in how the administration decides school.
No, and what the school rules.
No, right. So you're essentially saying you could adjust the question here to say, have a voice in how the administration decides schools, to make it clear that it's the administration deciding.
Yeah, because I didn't get that from that either. I was going where he was.
So, yeah, I'm wondering, do the kids think they should be making by this? It looks to me like they think they should be deciding the rules.
I think that that's one of the first questions that we need to ask. So, you know, whenever the language of these questions is all from the state survey. So we didn't change it because the kids, but we're looking to say, all right, we're gonna be judged on and need to think about the scores that come back from the state. So using the same questions with the same language allows us the opportunity to drill down into them in a way that we don't have that opportunity when it's just the 8th grade and just led by the state. So now that we have this result, we could go back to kids and say, what did this question mean to you? What's your expectation? What would it look like? You know, how much do you understand about how, for example, the handbook is built and how those rules are set? So, you know, being able to take this, like these questions and answers are not the be all end all. It's always about taking a look at the results and saying, all right, do we have more questions based on these responses? And that's a big one.
Yeah, so a lot of the problems with behavior occur in middle school, of course, because they're going through the beginnings of adolescence and, you know, hormones are developing and all these things. So there's a lot of angst.
Sure.
So maybe part of the problem is they think they have more power than they actually have, and that's.
Yeah, there's a maturity piece too
Yeah.
around, you know, one of the things that we frequently hear about the dress code policy is that it's biased against the girls. And we worked really hard 3 years ago, I think, or so, to come up with a policy that's not. However, if you're a girl and you get addressed because of something you're wearing that you don't see the boys wearing, for example, crop tops are one of those things that boys used to wear. They may come back. They're not currently in fashion. So
I've never seen that honestly, but for guys.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I
Well,
mean, so when the
boys don't have the
girls-
same anatomy as girls, that's.
All right, you don't need to.
that's not a problem. It
Let's-
doesn't matter. And like having an unbiased policy.
Like apples and oranges. I do have one other thing about discipline. When they say that they mediate conflicts by themselves, are they also deciding the punishments?
No, when we're talking about mediation, it's having, like, talking to kids about what their side of the story is and helping them address it with their friends.
Yeah,
You know,
That's,
to
yeah,
resolve the
like,
problem.
that sounds totally appropriate. I know of situations where a student was asked what the other student's punishment should be. So I just wondered if it was actually district-wide or a particular.
No, that's not something that we
Yeah.
recommend. We will sometimes ask kids what would help them feel better. You know, so when we're talking about, or, you know, are you going to meet with the kid? Are you not going to meet with the kid? How do we bring you back together? You know, when someone's been hurt, whether it's a student or an adult, it's one of the questions sometimes is, how does this get repaired? What would make you feel, what would make you trust the person again? What would make you, what would diminish the hurt in some ways? So sometimes that will come up in the conversation.
Okay, all right. What's that? Okay. Move on to the learning.
Right,
student
we're gonna
questions.
switch over to Kate.
All right, great, thank you, everyone. Hi. So just a reminder, so I know we were here a few weeks ago presenting on our school improvement plan. And I just wanted to remind you, like, our focus has been really on our tier 1 curriculum. That's the curriculum that every student at O'Malley receives. That we have been going through. We did our English curriculum review over the past 2 years. This past, probably first half of the year, more than half of the year, we piloted 3 different English programs. And then we selected and started implementation of Amplify at the end of February. So we're looking at data when we go through. So I'm going to present to you the English data, sort of our overall achievement for the, you know, looking at the fall to the spring, then what our growth was for English. And then we're going to look at our math data again, what was it in the fall to what it is now in the spring. And just keeping in mind that our focus has been that curriculum that's in that tier 1, which every student receives. We're also in the process of reviewing the math curriculum. So we
have chosen 2 programs to pilot in the fall. We'll be looking at sort of the first term, hopefully having something picked by around Thanksgiving. We're going to be looking at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt into math for the first part of the year, and then Amplified Desmos for the second part. And through that process, as I had mentioned before, we came up with our instructional vision for teaching mathematics, which I put at the end of the presentation for your reference, just to remind you. But we're going through this transition, and you'll see the scores sort of reflect that story of us working on that curriculum for all students. That's that tier 1. And then once we go through our English and math data for all students, we'll look at our intervention data, specifically looking at the growth and how the growth of students in intervention compared to students who were only receiving our current tier 1 curriculum. Right. So the next slide, we have some essays hanging on the wall at the Evening of Excellence. And then we'll get into our 6th grade data. So this data is based on the STAR 360 benchmarking that we do through elementary through middle school. They do it at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and around January, and then they do it at the end of the year. This year we did it the end of May, beginning of June. And what you can kind of see in the colors, we did have a little bit of growth for our meets and exceeds. We had a 4% increase from our winter benchmark, which I was here to present to you earlier this year. There was a 5% drop in the not meeting expectations. Now, this is based on the STAR 360. It's a predictor for how we do on MCAS. So those categories of not meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, and then the meets and exceeds are the same categories in the MCAS. So there's this whole algorithm that the computer does to sort of predict. It's a fairly accurate predictor of how we will do on the MCAS. And just in terms of the percents, the program did round it to the nearest whole percent. And so there are a few cases where you'll see it's off by 1% because they rounded to up. And then, you know, 1 down, and so it doesn't quite equal 100, but that's the data that STAR actually spits out to us. So I just wanted to put that out there before we're looking at them and they don't add up. But they are, you know, we have seen some growth. The 6th grade looked great. If we go to 7th grade, 7th grade maintained proficiency since the mid-year. You know, from the beginning of the year, they had gone up in the meets and exceeds, you know, at the end of the year. So we've ended at 51% meets and exceeds. You know, I'd love to see that in 70% range, 80% range, even 90% as we go forward. But, you know, we've only been in implementation phase for Amplify since, you know, end of February. So if we go on to grade 8, we saw a 4% drop in our not meeting expectations, and then we saw about a 5% increase in the meets and exceeds category. Again, it's not earth shattering, but it is still an increase, and we'll celebrate that small gain. When we go into the growth for ELA, the way this was figured, and we'll see a similar slide for the math and then for our intervention growth. The SGP is a student growth percentile. What is deemed typical growth is if a student scores between 40 and 60 percentile on that growth percentile score. It's looking at how a student improves compared to other students and themselves in a similar score range on the previous test. So this is an SGP calculated for the whole year for this English, for the English STAR. And so it's the growth from fall to spring. And we have 67.2% of our 6th graders were accelerated growth, which means they had an SGP, student growth percentile, of over 60 percentile, or typical growth, which was in that 40 to 60 range. You know, again, I'd like
She's
to
putting
do that.
typical and accelerated together.
Oh, okay.
We want students to make at least typical to accelerated growth. We don't want the low growth. So
So I'd like to see that low growth bar dip way down. I think, you know, it takes a while for us to see, you know, scores improve, but once we have our good, strong tier one intervention or tier one curriculum in place. Next year, we have a bunch of training scheduled to really get to know the ins and outs of the program, how we can pinpoint the different needs of all the students better to give them what they need in the general education classroom. We'll also be able to refine our, who goes into our intervention classes. So I'm hoping, over the next few years, we'll be able to see much more accelerated growth coming out of our English classes. Going on to math. We have in grade 6, so the math scores didn't have as much improvement as the ELA. And as you know, we're still in that process of, starting a pilot in the fall. This is kind of our story as, one of the reasons why. Grade 6, the meets and exceeds category did increase 2%, but so did the not meeting since our, last time that we met. So we move on to grade 7. There was really no net change from fall to spring. There's a little bit in between there, but overall 20% not meeting expectations. It's not what we want. And then grade 8, the not meeting expectations actually increased 2% since the last time we met at the mid-year. We definitely don't want our not meeting increasing. We want definitely more gains in our meets and exceeds, which in the case of grade 8 decreased by 3%. One thing to point out is that the test is a moving target, so it's not like we saw you'll see in the growth, there was a little bit of growth going on, but the score that they got in the spring would have to be a higher score than it was in the fall to maintain a proficient score or an exceed score. But we obviously want much higher gains. For the growth in grade 6, and again, I'm combining just the totals. We want that accelerated or typical growth. We had 60% of our students scoring in accelerated or typical growth. Grade 7, we had 64.4% in accelerated or typical growth, but we only had 50% of our 8th graders scoring accelerated or typical growth. So obviously that's going to be a focus of really, making sure that, whatever curriculum we're going to put in place allows for those opportunities for students not only to be practicing the math, but conversing with the math using manipulatives, whether they're virtual or actual physical manipulatives, really helping students to understand those concepts. If we look, here's our vision for math. As I mentioned, we want the students collaborating more in the math classroom, discussing more, really beefing up their problem solving skills. And then to look at our intervention, and these are just, we have our summer boost program going on. These are some of our kits that we've been putting together. Just a reminder, our intervention classes run during the school day. They run during our specialist block. The students are selected based on their STAR 360 score, as well as recommendations from their classroom teacher, their grades in the math class, their performance on classroom assessments. And usually we're looking at placing students in the class who score below a 40th percentile ranking on their STAR 360. During those classes, we use a bunch of interventions that are based on their STAR 360 data report, which is aligned to the curriculum standards. We've done a lot of work with the literacy intervention this year, using our resources from our DESE group that we were part of. We had a person meet with us from DESE to talk about how we can really pinpoint the skills identified in our testing reports, how we can plan those interventions, create stations within that block of time. We also look at scaling those practices to our special education classes that meet in the academic support block, as well as our L classes that also have academic support, to really look at how we can use our data to pinpoint what the kids need exactly, and then have them have different stations to practice and have one-on-one time with the interventionist to be able to really refine those skills and see progress. So we'll now jump on to some of the
I have
progress.
one good question about that.
Oh, sure.
Would that be considered, like, what tier is that class considered?
That would be considered tier 2.
Okay, what's considered tier?
So tier 3,
So tier 2 is extra practice, more individualized. Tier 3 is more significant and more frequent. Tier 3 can be special ed, it's not always special.
Mhm.
Tier 3 can just be something that is more intense of an intervention.
Also can be specialized instruction, that's our specialized instruction, so, certain folks are trained in special, programs related to literacy often, and so it could be that, and that sort of specialized instruction can be for students with disabilities or generally educated students.
And is there like a hard and fast rule, and I'm gonna guess not, but like, so you stay in tier 2. This class. At what point do you sort of say like, okay, this is. We need to move on to tier 3?
yeah, so we're constantly monitoring. So, I mean, ultimately, we like to be every 6 to 8 weeks, really testing and having conversations, looking at the student, are they meeting their benchmark? Are they ready to exit out, or do they need something else?
Yeah.
So those conversations do happen. They happen roughly once a quarter. So it is around that, 8 to 10 week time
So
period.
frequent enough.
Yes,
So
and
that the
then we
movement
have the,
happen.
the team meetings in place at the, the grade level meetings. So if we see a kid who is not making progress in intervention, then, that might be something we bring up to at like a child study type of meeting where we look at, okay, well, what else can we do? Do we need to, get, something else put in place? Maybe, maybe it's not an academic concern. Maybe it's a social emotional need that they need, something else that the school has to offer them.
Can I follow up on it?
Yeah, sure.
So just doing the math real quick. Say the first 2 months, the first 8 weeks, they're doing tier 1. Then there's recognition that they need tier 2. So now you're in month 5 before you're trying to determine whether tier 3, if you're saying they're evaluated, which
Yes.
is
So what we do,
3/4 into the way of the school year. And like,
Tier-
that's why we're not seeing growth if we're not identifying early enough, is my question.
yeah, so
Is
like
there-
right now,
yeah.
I mean, we've already looked at the end of the year data in terms of placing the kids for the fall. So I mean, we'll be looking at, there might be kids we have to put in based on like initial data that we get in the fall, but we're always using the most relevant data, and sometimes something happens. Sometimes, a kid has held strong, as they go through elementary school, concepts are a lot more concrete. When you get into middle school, they're learning a lot more abstract. And so sometimes different issues don't come up until they're in 6th or 7th grade, just because, whatever's been working in that tier 1 instruction has been working. And sometimes the tier 2 instruction happens in the general education classroom as well. So just because this is like a pull out intervention that happens for 1 term, that doesn't mean that things aren't happening during Flexbox, with our Amplify program in particular, every, 4th day, or, it might be on day 4, it might be on day, 16, or it might be on day 8. They, teachers pull the data and give the kids what I need or what they need, like on that, like kind of like that what I need block, a win block, but they have it in the classroom. So there's a constant sort of using data to give kids what they need on a rotating cycle within the general classroom.
That's the question. So given the percentages, do we have enough intervention classes? Is this to me, if we have 200, it's on average per grade, and significant percent is not meeting.
So that's hard to judge now, because our tier 1 has not been in place at O'Malley, fully in place. The work we did this year on selecting an ELA program, and we are in the process of fully implementing. Starting in the fall, it will be all year a consistent program. Once we have a consistent program in place for a whole year, and if we're still seeing not growth, we can talk about that, but we don't want to add, you don't want to add tier 2 or tier 3 in place of a tier 1. like tier one instruction has to be there. It has to be there strong and consistent for all students. That's how we make it equitable and that's how we address all student learning. So we need to get that in place first.
And my recall from back when we had Bay State Regional, we were implementing new curriculum for ELA then. And even with our coaches here, when they're implementing new curriculum, they say the first year, don't expect the first year.
Right.
So I think we need to.
So we're not gonna have miracles next year, but we're gonna
Right.
go in the right direction. And any new curriculum takes at least 3 years to fully implement. But our focus needs to be to have tier one instruction strong for everyone. Once that's in place, we can add more tier two and tier three if we need to. That being said, students who need tier two and tier three, we're not gonna ignore that. So we do have intervention classes in place. And we are doing tier two within the classroom when needed, but we have to first strengthen that tier one instruction to know that.
So that's ELA. Now what about math?
Yeah, let me just add a little, and also answer your question. I'm just gonna add one more thing, which is, it's a pretty common perception that we can, that folks, or school folks even, that you can sort of tier two your way out of low performance. And you actually can never, if you have 30, 40, 50, 60% of kids not meeting standards or expectations in this case, that's a tier one instruction problem.
Yeah.
It's not an intervention problem. It's what it's saying is that our tier one instruction, and remember, tier one instruction is not for some kids, it's the everyday instruction everyone gets in a regular curriculum, okay? What it's saying, if you have that many kids not meeting expectations, is you have a tier one problem. You've got to make that curriculum stronger, you gotta make the instruction stronger, you gotta make the practices around how teachers collaborate and the data they use, what they do with that data and how they respond stronger. And that's what we're, we're on that path. And certainly not there yet, in various ways, but that's the thing, because ultimately, if as your tier one instruction gets stronger and stronger, you actually have fewer and fewer kids who need tier two, even tier three interventions. That's what we're in the middle of.
So this data is saying we're doing the right thing by looking at our math curriculum and piloting new, and by implementing a new ELA curriculum, because we need to fix tier one. That's the first step.
So I'm trying to follow around this and it's making sense because I don't think of it that way. However, what do you say to the parent of a child that getting the tier one now, which is new, right? They've fallen into a tier two category, right? You're not seeing more improvement. Are you saying the solution is to improve more tier one for that student?
No,
To help
so
him? If we're talking about, we have to make tier one stronger, I get that. But the kids that have already gotten to 2 and maybe 3, that's not helping them at this
Right.
point. That's gonna help the ones that are in tier one. So where is the intervention for
So that's
those
why-
kids, and why do we wait eight weeks to go by to test them in tier 2 to make sure they're not going into 3? I'm trying to see, scores aren't that great here, right? So there's a group of kids that aren't gonna get the benefit of this new curriculum, right? So they're here and they're struggling. What practices are we putting in place for them, knowing that we're gonna strengthen the kids coming in? But we still have that group of kids that is identified as not doing well and now going off to high school soon, right? So where is the intervention for those kids besides saying that tier one, making it stronger? Because I understand that philosophy, it makes sense, but I'm just worried about the kids that are in that group. That's a high percentage.
Yeah, so we do, that's why we do have the 2 intervention classes for ELA and for math. Students who are not making progress in tier 1, we are providing additional support through those classes, also within the regular ed classroom. If a student goes into tier 2 and is still not making progress,
But you don't test till 8 weeks later.
so you can't.
Okay, Amy, can I jump in?
Yeah.
So maybe I can help with this. So we start the year in the first couple weeks of school doing a round of benchmark testing. So we have the year before, whether it's 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and then we have the same product, the STAR 360 in reading and math done within the first couple weeks of school. So we have information from the prior years, for start and also for student performance on grade level assessments in the curriculum that comes in and sets our list for who's starting out that first term in intervention. And then we have the fall test that if there are kids who weren't on our list based on the spring results, we're taking a look at them now to say, okay, this kid wasn't on the list for intervention, should they be? And we can move them in at that time, right?
Lynn, that's within a few weeks of the school start,
Yes.
not 8
Yes.
weeks, right?
Yeah. So we're not waiting till that whole first term completes before we evaluate anyone. So they're all getting evaluated start of the year. And then we also have ongoing formative and summative assessments within the curriculum. So that's where Kate mentioned the conversations at house team meetings, and she's in constant conversation with the teachers all along. So before we get to that, 8-week mark where we're starting to think about where kids are going to be for the following term, anytime through the term, if a kid's really struggling, we could take a look at it and put them into the intervention class at that time if needed. And that's to say, if, there may be, especially at the beginning of the year, it's always the teachers getting to know the kids and, taking a look at how they're coming in, how they're adjusting to the school year. But then, and trying to work with and try things within the classroom. So they may or may not be pulled out, as problems arise to get into the intervention class that first term, but the teachers are trying things within the class. So that's where when Kate mentioned that tier 2 can be pull out, you could get your extra scoop and pull out, but it's also within the classroom. Teachers will do things like, okay, I've got, these 6 kids who didn't do well on this particular standard. I'm going to have them do a different assignment to reteach and have more practice on it right within the classroom. So, maybe that might help to answer the kinds of questions about, what are we doing in the meantime? For 8th grade, which, those scores are definitely the lowest. We also have to remember that those are the true pandemic impact kids for middle school. They came into middle school, at that fall 2020 when we were half days, et cetera. So they are starting some other things at high school to also try to take a look at that. For example, we have our summer boost program. They have a program that they've just initiated this year that will be starting, I think it's in August, but I'm not actually positive, where they're going to do some work with kids as well. We have some of our 8th graders who are with us and underperforming in the summer boost program at O'Malley prior to 9th grade. So some of that catch up, it's not like we washed our hands of them June 13th and we're done and they're going off to whatever they get. So we've still got them tracked in summer boost. There's the Jumpstart program is what it's called, going into the high school for the fall. And then high school is also doing some other intensive work on interventions there. So, there are lots of little moving parts to all this.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, Kate, you've been before us a couple of times now. You are a great educator. I can tell by listening to you that
Thank you.
you seem to do a good job, and I'm really impressed by it. Second thing is there any proof or is there any evidence that using Amplify for the math curriculum makes up of the EL? Is it using Amplify for both? Does that make sense? I guess is what I'm asking.
Other than logging on, I don't even know if the login is through the same platform. The teachers chose Amplify for math to pilot because they have a great online manipulative program, which they have supplemented a little bit with, but there's a lot. ELA has been so impressive using that platform. But no, there's no.
There's no good.
I do would like it because it's one login too, but
Yeah. Right.
other than that, we're judging it on the curriculum.
I'm all in for everything myself. Wit and Wisdom, I was so impressed by Wit and Wisdom. I'd like to learn a little bit more about Amplify in the fall. And maybe a quick presentation on Amplify and what that's all about. The other thing that I wrote down is, I don't think we can discount the fact that there's probably a dotted line between some of the low scores of the not meeting expectations to some of the things that we talked about at the beginning of the session, which include, do students see value in what they're learning? Does my classmates, do the students respect each other? It's la la land if you think we're going to get that percentage down to zero of kids that are, gonna struggle in certain stuff, but I think there's a tie in there. If kids see value, if kids respect what the teachers are saying, if kids all those things, I wrote down every one of them that scored below 70%. And if we work on those things and improve those things, maybe that helps. I'm certainly not an expert on discipline or any of that stuff, but
That's why when schools build multi-tiered systems of support, they don't just focus on literacy and math. They also focus on the social emotional learning. So making that response in those programs and our instruction more robust with that is the third prong of the tiered support program. And our kids need it. You're absolutely right. That if they're not feeling good about themselves, about school, then it doesn't really matter how good our curriculum products are.
totally agree with that. And as a kind of someone that, sometimes when it comes to these discipline things, you got to personalize it a bit. I always think back to when I was a kid, I could have a tendency to maybe bully kids once in a while. And it wasn't until someone said to me, hey, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? That I finally thought, oh, bringing someone in to speak to it, just like Lynn said, I could easily get lost in an auditorium with 400 kids and not, put any value into what anyone said. But someone coming up to me and saying, hey, why don't you get your act together? That should probably help me more than anything. But that's it. But very impressed by you, and I'm really. Last thing the proof is in the pudding. 2 years out from now, if the scores are still the same, then there's going to be an issue, and we'll figure it out then. But I really think we need to give this some time and work through it. So, thank you very much. That's my speech.
From looking at the math scores for 7th and 8th, it's approximately a fifth of the student body for that. Is that essentially? It sounds to me like that's like a whole class of kids, right? Like how many classes are there for like each grade?
For like the number of math classes.
Right, like how many groups, classes?
That might be a list.
Student body
Like in
for the
terms
7th
of
grade.
math classes. and
Like a
stuff.
fifth of that would that be like 20 kids?
I'm not sure I understand what the question is. So
I'm saying, okay, if the fifth of the 7th graders and the fifth of the 8th graders are not meeting math expectations.
Yep.
How many students is that?
So there-
like a-
we've got about like between 200 and 225 in each grade level.
Mhm.
You're talking about a fifth, you're talking about 40 kids in a grade level.
Yeah, so essentially a couple classes worth of kids that
Yep.
need 2nd tier at least.
Well, it depends. I mean, again, as Amy described, like if your tier 1 isn't in place, you could dump hundreds of thousands of dollars into tier 2 and you're still going to keep having the same problem because your basic curriculum is not in the right place. So that's where we focused all of our energy on these last couple of years, is getting all of those things in place through research and data collection and curriculum analysis, and starting to pilot and implement programs that are solid. They're highly rated, they're evidence-based, so that so that our starting point makes sense. When you start there and then move forward into, okay, the expectation is that now we've got that in place and it's solid and we're well trained and our instruction is effective, then the groups of kids who need that tier 2 should shrink. So if we sort of did this, I won't say backwards, but sideways. We had funding to put a tier 2 program in place before we had finished establishing a solid tier 1 program. The recommended way to do it is get your tier 1 ducks in a row and then look at what you need for tier 2. But we had kids who were underperforming at a significant level, and we had funding. So I didn't want to wait.
Yeah, I understand there's a transition period
Yeah.
to develop the new math curriculum.
Yep.
But in the meantime, kids are graduating from middle school, and for me, I think, there's 2 huge groups of kids, essentially two classes of kids that maybe if we concentrate on those kids and develop those as, rather than say like, my problem is like there are kids that are meeting the expectations or exceeding the expectations. How much does this, interfere with their learning? And then how much are we failing that fifth of the kids in those grades? who continue on to high school while we get our math curricula tier 1 in order. I think there needs to be like a transition plan that would address these immediate problems and stay student focused rather than like worry about like how our curriculum is established.
Well,
the long
that's why
term.
we.
There's like
that's why we
mixing
worked on
long-term
tier 2
goals
at the same
versus.
time. That's why we worked on tier 2 at the same time. Because if
Yeah.
we hadn't implemented the math class this year or the literacy class the year before, you're absolutely right. We wouldn't be addressing those kids who have the significant need now.
Those 7th graders last term are now going to be 8th graders. And if we're not ready for them to become high schoolers, I don't think we're doing what we need to do to help those kids.
We've been on the committee for a long time, and I will just give some historical perspective. There's been a lot of effort at the elementary school for many years, and this is exactly what needs to happen at the elementary in terms of getting everybody on the same curriculum. We're now on the second ELA curriculum. So the first adoption made improvements, and now they're leaping again. It took quite a while for that to happen. I will also recall that in terms of capacity around curriculum instruction, I don't think until Greg took over as the assistant superintendent, did somebody really dig into what are teachers using, what is consistent, what is working, let's try to analyze, and then we brought the data practices in, and it is hard work. We didn't have a K at the middle school, and I, unfortunately, there's only so much capacity, because I remember, why can't we be doing this? I'd ask the previous superintendent, he'd be like, we can only ask so much, and we only have so much capacity to kind of guide the work too, because Amy's involved K through 12, right? And we need Amy, or we needed Greg Bach to be doing that. So it's very all-consuming work. And so as much as this is, we'd like to see better scores, we at least have over the past year to 2 years have been laying that groundwork that we did the same methodology, getting teachers involved in picking curriculum, analyzing data, professional development, really reviewing practice. So I understand what you're saying. We definitely have gaps there, and I just hope this coming year really shows.
I do want to wrap this up, but, and what I'll say, trying to do that is, I hear the urgency, and I need everyone in the room who's listening to know that I share that urgency. And Amy does, and I know folks on Mainly do too. And that's very real, very important. And unfortunately, no quick fixes. More tier 2 for more kids, it's a quick fix that will not work. We have to do the work we're doing on data analysis, on tier 2, on tier 3, and supporting kids right now immediately. We also have to build for long term. It's hard to do both at the same time, but we have to. If we don't build for long term, we won't get out of the cycle of incremental improvements, small improvements. Okay. So, but I do want to clearly say is we can do better. And we need to do better. And our educators, our staff, our school leaders, our district leaders, all want to do better. And I feel like we're putting in the pieces to do better, but that's not enough. Wanting to and putting these pieces and putting in the work isn't enough unless those results are showing for our students. And so that is paramount and something that we will continue to report on. I mean, as I just what Kathy said is until recently, O'Malley hasn't had the leadership on curriculum or any support on that. O'Malley has not been looking at curriculum for a long time. They haven't had coherence around that. They haven't been supportive of doing that, and so we're doing those pieces now. Again, not showing results yet, but we need to see results soon. Absolutely.
And we're investing money in curriculum, right? That's in the budget.
Those investments that have been.
Yeah.
And Donna, I know. And Donna, I know, we're done.
It's just like, I just don't want to lose.
No, I know,
focus of,
we know.
like the actual kids,
Yeah.
not just being
He just.
curriculum focused.
No, he said
So,
interventions are immediate.
We are
I'm with you,
focused.
trust me.
I've got to be kid focused, but have to work on the instruction and the what we're asking kids to do. And by doing that, you are getting focused. We also, as you folks know, priority one, our program improvement is about belonging and engagement. Okay, and the reason for that is kids don't, they belong, don't feel engaged in the work or the classes. They won't learn, okay? But we also do that in order for them to learn better. Okay, it's not just about having kids feel good, okay? You have a place for them, and you know they're connected and belong and engaged because we know that makes them learn better. Okay, it's both and it's just, yeah, that's our path. That's right. So. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you for the hiring you're doing now, and the interviews you're doing now, and preparing for next year you're doing now. And I also hope you do service. Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
So I want to turn next to the budget, okay? Well, it should. In your packet.
See Gary. Hi, Gary.
Hi,
Hey, Gary.
Welcome.
thank you.
Right, so as all of you know, we've been working on finalizing the budget. So I've been working with the mayor and his team, as well as the school committee, as well as our financial team, meaning Gary Frisch and Seven Frontiera. And other folks, so we're going to show you what we've been able to do to move forward with a balanced budget. I do want to sort of, so we've made a number of changes in order to finalize the budget. I'll explain those to you in a moment. I do want to remind folks that we've had significant in FY23, significant special education cost above what was budgeted. Okay, so, and that impacts what we're able to do in terms of finalizing the budget. So I want to just remind folks of that. You know, this is to the tune of $1.4 million above what we budgeted for FY23. You can see how it's broken out across district transportation, special education, contract services, and also tuition as well. Here. So now, as you remember, there was a gap between my recommended budget and the mayor's $603,000 difference. So we knew we had to close that. And we went about it in a variety of ways. First of all, the mayor made available to us $300,000 in terms. So sorry, let me back up. So in order to address that gap, we looked at three different sort of approaches. Okay, three different things we did. Okay, and I'll go into detail about that. One, working with the budget, the city to close the budget. Okay, and we also, so in order to make these budget adjustments, it allows us, what we're doing here. Sorry, let me slow down here. What we're doing, what I'm about to show you, we've been doing allows us to do a few things: close the budget gap for the city. Okay, be in compliance with our ESSER funding. Okay, and then provide sufficient funds for added tuition for FY24. Okay, so we've done that through prepay. We're going to be doing it through a combination of ways, which I'll describe in a moment. So there's sort of three major buckets where we adjusted things, and that's through working with the mayor really and city council here, working with operating changes of our own budget, and then transferring extra dollars from FY23, FY24. That allowed us to close the gap of $600,000, plus also made $644,000 available for our budget for next year. Okay, I'll explain what that means in a moment here. So I'm going to first look at the first two here, the grease traps and deferred payment of buses and the operating changes. So working with the mayor's team, we're able to move $300,000 off our operating budget. Part of that is grease traps, and part of that is deferring a first payment on the used buses. Okay, that's $300,000. You see, there's 138 here on the second row. Part of our reduction in transportation costs are also maintenance supply costs that are also on our operating budget. But the city's helped us out, which is just about $300,000 taking one-time costs off of our operating budget. Made some building-based reductions, $90,000. That's everything from supplies, some technology. I think one special education position. We also reduced 3 FTEs in special education. That's 2 teaching positions and 1 paraprofessional. And those are tied to not needing those certain level of service and programs based on our student needs. Based on our student needs and IEPs. We had more retirements than we reported to you a couple months ago, and that always happens towards the end of the year. So that's a number. Our retirement savings always is adjusted here at the end. We're able to do that again. Probably the most significant one here is reducing a special education. One for this specific one is reducing a special education contingency from $500,000, which is sort of the typical amount, to $250,000. And then we also moved ESSER positions. We deferred moving ESSER positions to the operating fund. So we had 6 positions. We're going to move to operating fund. We're not doing that for FY25. We will attempt to do that as we move into. We're not doing that in FY24. We'll attempt to do that in FY25. Okay. And so the last piece here is prepaid tuition. So we have to reduce prepaid tuition that was reported to you in May, going from $1.1 million down to $500,000. Okay. And we're doing that for 2 reasons. We need to transfer ESSER dollars to the operating budget from ESSER in FY23. Okay. I'll explain the reason for that in a moment. And then we had to revise salary expenditures were higher than we anticipated. When we balance those out between grants and the operating budget, we had to adjust those. So those 2 reductions reduces prepaid from $1.1 million to $500,000. Because of that, though, we have some because we are moving. While prepaid is lower than it has been in the past, because we're moving ESSER dollars to next year. Okay, that opens up dollars in the operating budget for next year's just tuition. Okay, I'll show that to you in a moment here. Average tuition. So this is just how we're managing average tuition. Okay, and we're doing it through a variety of ways. You see that when the public hearing budget was. Tuition expected for fiscal 2024 is $4.5 million. That still stays the same. We just are paying for it differently across the 2 fiscal years. As you know, because we do prepay every year, we are able to pay for any given year's average tuition using a combination of the prior year dollars and then the current year dollars. Okay. So where we had expected and reported to you in the public hearing budget, that we used 1.25 for prepaid, okay, and then allocating 1.274 from the circuit breaker funding. We shifted that, and we're going to be using $500,000 for prepay from FY23, and we'll be using an increased amount for circuit breaker funding, $1.4 million. Okay. What that does, it essentially increases the budget for average tuition from 2.3 to $2.9 million, which means we need that amount of dollars, $640,000, your operating budget, of more in our operating budget available to spend for average tuition. That's the amount that we've been able to clear up with these changes here. Okay, the 644 you see on the bottom, okay, is now available to us in the FY24 year to pay for this new increase in the FY24 budget. Okay. This does not affect our bottom line budget. The budget you're voting on tonight is the budget that you expected to vote on, but we've had to adjust through circuit breaker the dollars we're spending, whether it's FY23 or FY24. Okay. Whether it's ESSER in FY23 or ESSER in FY24, and that's what I've been trying to describe. me stop there and see if there are questions. I mentioned we're gonna not move all of our ESER positions that we planned on the operating budget. These are the ones we are moving. We see O'Malley support there is our highest priority. That's the reason we're moving those positions onto the operating budget. You also see that we're able to move the CBT director from a private grant onto the operating budget as well. So these are long-term plans we're having, and we're able to implement them by making sure they're in the operating budget. We are making some staffing adjustments. We've talked about these before, but just to put them really clearly for folks. As I mentioned all the way through the process, every year schools and districts should be making staffing adjustments. That could be because of programming changes. That could be because of the changes in level of service for students with disabilities. That could be programming changing or scheduling changes. So we are making adjustments in these positions. So Plum Cove teacher. And that's because of small class size in first grade, only 20 students in that class. We can't have 2 different classes for that. O'Malley math teacher, we schedule programming changes are allowing for that. PH4 language course selection. French is not happening these days, so the kids who are enrolled in French will continue, but we won't have a new French class for 9th graders, and that allows us to position there. And then 2 special education positions. These are ones I've already mentioned, but that's at East Veterans and O'Malley. Those student services are needed based on the student profiles and level of need. And the food service manager, the school consolidation. We don't need 2 managers at one school building. So we do that. Those are happening. Those changes are happening through attrition, retirements, open positions, or assignment change. So, for example, so some of these are, so people aren't losing their jobs, but they are, but they're, maybe someone is leaving, someone's retiring, we're replacing that person. Or a person who had one assignment and now have a new assignment, but the position was open. So the draft summary is it's a 2.75 increase, okay. And that's allowable for us because of some adjustments we made in spending, but also the $200,000 that the city took off of our in one-time expenses, opening up more dollars in our operating budget. So we reduce our operating expenses by about $350,000, but we then have more on our operating budget to spend because the city takes dollars off of our budget, and then we can spend $30 within our operating budget. That equals $650. Here is the adjustment there from the public hearing budget, which you voted on last, to the current budget, the final budget. It'll be $49,730,897. There's the difference from before. Remember again, while there looks like there's $650,000 difference there, 300,000 of that remains in our operating budget, and spend against it. That's what we have for the presentation.
Do we have any questions?
Can I just highlight or have Ben or Gary, I don't know if Gary's on.
Yeah, yes,
Just the grease trap issue.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of chatter on the, first, thank you to administration for working with us to fix those grease trap. But there's a perception out in the community that why can't the DPW just fix them and why are we spending all this money? So I don't know that the conversations grasp the full need of the grease traps. It's not just putting in a grease trap, it's specialized plumbing, I believe is what Gary said, that leads to the price of.
Yeah, one of the arguments that was made at a recent city council meeting was, we don't need grease traps, they last forever.
Exactly.
Nothing lasts forever, especially a 50-year-old device encased in cement,
Yeah.
So I saw some photos recently of it, rather gross, but anyway. So maybe it was built in 1970. I think it's part of the original grease traps, and contrary to what some people saying, they have been maintained a lot better in recent years than prior, but it's at the end of its useful life.
Right.
So, And $300,000 is the going rate. This isn't just a garbage disposal off the shelf at Home Depot. You know,
I just
So-
wanted to highlight that a little bit because the many are understanding.
Right,
The-
I mean, it's
the need or the-
industrial equipment, you know, so it's, I guess the average homeowner doesn't think of it that way, you know, we replace the dishwasher, that's what, $300-400. This is, it's a different world, you know, in the industrial world, something that's used quite often. In this case, over the course of the last almost 50 years.
And this has been on our radar for a while, so I mean, to
Yeah.
finally get to it is great, right? So they outlived their life.
Yes.
So this was a concern before I got here, and we're trying to address it for a few years, and getting the dollars to do it, we finally can, because of the city making one time a money out of us, and stabilize their capital account. It is, that just by the DPW does so much for our buildings, okay, but one place that they have not, and sort of like, you know, there's a limit there. And the limit has been clearly since they started taking over the responsibility for our buildings, has been specialized, you know, plumbing and utilities related to our food service programs. So that could be dishwashers and that sort of equipment. They don't maintain, and especially plumbing as well related to that, including grease traps. So that's not a new thing. It's the way DPW and the schools have worked, you know, for over 10 years. As either one of our kitchen managers will tell you, that are mainly HHS, this is something that has been a long time coming. It is certainly, this is about, you know, ripping up the floors and then removing all the plumbing in there, putting it back in. Some of them have long leads in terms of, you know, how much pipe, and it's all putting it all back in and tiling again. You know, and so it is, as the mayor described, not just something I can do in my home. Or even the DPW, you know, doesn't have that, they don't do that work in-house. You know, so that's something.
Thank you.
I think the one lesson learned from this is we may need to make sure we have representation at the city council building, budget and finance when they talk about requests like this, because it seemed that there just wasn't enough detailed information. They put it forward, they voted to have it funded.
Yeah.
But I think there were a lot of questions at the city council, and if those questions or the detail could have been a little more available as subcommittee, then maybe people would understand that this is not just taking out your garbage disposal and putting it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay. I just have one comment to make about the budget, knowing that prepaid is usually much larger than what this is. And because of the changes that have been made to the district expenses and kind of how we're dealing with closing the gap and finding some more money to put into special education costs. I still feel like we are very, that we have less flexibility for unforeseen increased expenses this year than we did even this past year. This past year went up by 1.4. This coming year, you know, we just need to make sure we keep an eye on special education and circuit breaker, and you know, and as some of those costs become significant, we need to be, you know, highlighting and making people aware that we, because it does, you know, get into the other parts of the budget if we don't keep an eye on it. And we do want to go into next year with a more reasonable pre-K.
I think there's an argument you made that we could have and maybe should have gone back because of the increases in year increases on special education costs for FY 23. Perhaps it was argument made we should have gone back to the city. If we didn't, we managed with our own budget and are able to because of some of the increase we're getting circuit breaker reimbursement. But it does make next year very tight, and there is if the costs continue to go up and or we have more students who need really specialized services, there is a good chance we'll have to go back to the city for you know, during the school year, and that's because special education expenses are mandated. It's not something. It's not a choice we have. No, we need to and must support those special education students at the highest level in terms of their free and appropriate education in the research environment. But it's not something we can just not do. So, but that's a way of saying that our budget for next year will be very tight. And if the cost, if the in-year cost increase like it did this past year, or this FY 23, we're gonna really have to do some good work to make it.
I think what might be helpful for that is at the DNF meetings monthly, just get an updated report on spending on that department.
If there's occasion,
So it
yeah.
doesn't come to us 3 months later, you know what I mean?
that's right.
Just see if we can see the rise and fall. That's what I think.
So with that objection, we'd like to take, we should probably vote the budget.
Yeah, so the BNF subcommittee met on June 20th, and we had the same discussion, the same presentation, we're able to ask questions to the superintendent and CFO. And as a result, there was a motion to recommend to the full school committee to approve the fiscal year budget in the amount of 49,738,897. With the adjustments that were presented tonight, and I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, Maria?
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Verga,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Chairperson Clancy, and Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
Good work on budget.
Thank you.
Gary, if you listen.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Mayor John Dunn, Kenny Costa, and others. Always a tremendous partnership with the city. Really, I value and Gary values is how closely he's able to work with Kenny specifically, and the folks there, but also John. They're great partners. So thank you very much. Likewise. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to give up some updates here. Back on the agenda. I guess we're on the agenda, but it's back in order. Few things to update you on. Important pieces, summer capital projects, there are TC update. Then we'll go to the evaluation of me and then finish with the disposition of ETS and veterans. So, bunch of things as you saw as you entered the high school. After a few years hiatus, DPW is leading an effort to replace, or it's commissioned an effort to replace the remainder of the lockers at the high school. These are replacing the old blue slim, pretty much not usable lockers, rusted awful with the great red ones we have, which are, above and below, wider, can actually fit a backpack. Kids don't use lockers a whole lot, but as you can see, having the lockers built in like this, actually remediation of that to make it just like, the ceramic walls basically would be actually much more expensive than just inserting new lockers. So also lockers look good, they're great color, had some, but just it's completing a project that started before I arrived. At one point thought we could do it during the summer of 2020. That was a busy summer.
Everybody was home.
Anyway, and another project that'll happen at the high school later this summer is replacing the flooring and the stairs. It's rubberized, sort of safety flooring, and it's coming up to places. And that's one of the projects that DPW has identified and worked with the city to get funding. Mainly window door replacement is happening. This happened before any of us, I think, originally imagined. We thought this might be a couple years off, and it's happening right now. And so we see here, this is the cafeteria, an example of from the inside on the right, all the windows on the west side of the cafeteria removed. I mean, these folks started literally June 14th, so they've been at it for more than a week. More than 2 weeks now, I guess. And you can see the new ones are on the left there, clean and bright and brand new. Here's an example of the sealant they're applying. That's also the cafeteria windows. You see they're operating on both levels at once. Can't quite tell where that's in the back of the school, right there. As you can see the back of the gardens there. So they're operating on both levels, or these two levels. And they're going around in counterclockwise fashion. We're getting updates daily in terms of photos and everything that's happening. We have a private call every single week on Mondays, and it's a holiday on Wednesdays. And just as a reminder, all the windows in the building will be replaced this summer, including the very large ones in the science center on the bottom floor and the library meeting center and commons on the upper floor. And what won't be replaced this year are the high windows and this in the ceiling of the cafeteria, the ceiling of the hallways, and also the ceiling of the learning common. That'll be done a year from now. But they are rolling along, and it's a bunch of great work by the contractors, great communication by the contractors and our project management team. We're going for. This is we continue to work at Plum Cove and Beaman exteriors. As you know, the intention here, as we set a year and a half ago, I guess it was to maintain both these schools for up to 10 years. Before their next phase comes in.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
What's that?
It looked like fishtails. It was metallic.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we were
Yeah,
going
that's
for.
not metallic, that's bare wood.
Yeah.
But so the two things are happening, two different projects are happening at both schools, so they are repairing some exterior work, you know, and they're also really the painting, but in order to paint all the surfaces, you've got to repair some exterior work, so here you're seeing the sanding of the very worn out or peeling tiles there in the front of the school there. These are all, yeah, Plum Cove ones. That's the back of the gym wall, I think stripped down to bare wood. I think then comes adding new shingles. That's what I'm looking for. There you can see upper windows there being peeled and that sort of stuff, or sanded and first thing, scraped, I mean. And then the other piece of not only, so this is happening at Beam as well. The other piece they're doing is also replacing the rooftop units, so the HVAC for the modulars. That's part of the modular project, which was finished last year, but for supply chain issues, we were able to get those in on time last summer. So we always knew and have reported to you that that's completed this summer. So modulars are getting new rooftop units. That's good. So good work there. Katie Provo is on. And if she can unmute herself, she's going to give us. So now we're going to give you a quick up. Let me stop. Any questions on Beaman, Plum Cove, GHS, O'Malley?
Glad to see it all going on.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. Yeah. And on top of all that, as you can see out here, is they're cleaning schools and doing the floors and moving furniture in and out and sort of stuff. So just so much work in summertime happening with our facilities and supported DPW. Now we're going to talk about summer learning, and first Katie Provo will go in terms of our summer learning for students with disabilities, and then Amy Pascarello will give us an update on what's happening in general education. Okay, there you go.
Everyone. Sure. So our summer programming started this week and it's been off to a very successful start. This is an explanation as to why we provide the summer programming, and that our extended school year is for special education and related services that go beyond the calendar year for students with disabilities who require that in order to prevent significant regression. So this is the criteria that we look at when we make the decisions at IEP team meetings every year, is really looking and making sure that if we're recommending summer programming, that it's because the students will either significantly regress or take too long to recoup, or the severity of their needs is that of a nature that they really need the ongoing support throughout the summer. So you can go to the next slide and I can tell you about the programs. So currently our summer programs, they're running for 6 weeks from June 26th until August 3rd. We are closed for the 3rd and the 4th of July for the holiday. The majority of our special ed programs are located at West Parish School, and they're running from 8:15 to 12:15 Monday through Thursday. So we are fortunate to partner again with the Open Door, where they're providing a breakfast and lunch for the students on a daily basis. These are the variety of programs that we have that are at West Parish. We have our preschool program that runs Monday through Thursday. We have our Moderate Needs Learning Center, which is 2 days a week. We have a K through 2 program that is Monday, Wednesday, and then 3 through 5 for grades 3 through 5 for Tuesday, Thursday. We have more of an intensive needs learning center program that's more for our students with autism and developmental delays and intellectual impairment that runs from Monday through Thursday, and that's 2 different classrooms. We have our social skills classroom that runs 2 days a week as well, and it's actually flipped so that our moderate learning needs students, if they're in K-2 and they need social skills on top of that, then they can come Monday, Wednesday for their academic, and then Tuesday, Thursday for more social skill development. So some students are getting a 4-day program and some are getting a 2-day based on their need. We have our language-based program that runs for grades 3 through 5, Monday through Thursday. Our life skills high school program is also located at West Parish, and that's grades 8 through 12. We do have an 8th grader that is, we have 8th graders that are embedded within that because they fit the 48-month within that same age range. New this summer is we have our transition program for students 18 to 22, and this is off-site. It's located at the YMCA and it's job coaching. So Heather, our transition program teacher, is really working with the students throughout the summer to continue with their on-the-job coaching, and they were able to secure a site at the Y for that. So we're thankful to the Y for that. And then we have our related services, which include occupational therapy, speech and language, and physical therapy, also located at West Parish. And then in addition to that, we do have academic tutoring for students at all grade levels, K through 12. This is located, we have some receiving services at Plum Cove, some at Beeman, the majority are at West Parish, and then our middle schoolers are at O'Malley and our high schoolers at the high school. And that is it for summer. Lisa Labella is our program director this summer. She is the adjustment counselor at West Parish. Transportation has been fabulous. IT has been fabulous. And I have to say, you know, we really have hit the ground running and everything's going very smoothly right now, despite all the rain. Any questions on summer, special ed summer programming?
Thank you, Katie.
It's a lot. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And thank you for leading it. You and Lisa, thank you very much for leading it. And all the folks, all the staff and folks who are there every day.
I ditto on that. We have a great staff there.
Now
Thank-
we're going on to Amy Pascarella.
Okay, so I'm talking about summer learning for both teachers and for our students. So I'm going to start out with some professional development that's happening in the district over the summer. If you remember, our K-5 math coaches came and presented the Fact Fluency, wonderful thing that's taken off. They have a new book study that they're running that is filled in a waiting list to go on for teachers to go on it. It's very exciting. And this is a parent's guide to K-5 mathematics. So they're really focusing on how to engage parents more in the math curriculum and to support parents in supporting students through math. So that's going on currently. In literacy, we have already had, it's only 2 weeks into summer, we've already had a full day wit and wisdom training in person for writing. And that's for our new adopters. And then the following day, we had a half day on wit and wisdom testing, and a half day in the afternoon, same day, was on wit and wisdom fluency. Those 2 trainings were virtual and more well attended. I think people liked the choice of living it from home. They had about 25 in both of those, and fewer in the full day in person. But the training was excellent, and very excited. We are having a letters course that's not misspelled. That's what it's called, the letters course. And it really, we have Shannon Camo, who took a letters training this year. It's on the science of reading, and she's offering her knowledge back to the district. And we have teachers all the way up K through 12 that are joining this course because the science of reading applies to everyone. So it's really nice to see teachers signing up for that. There's curriculum work across the grade levels. We have study groups for like there's a kindergarten study group for wit and wisdom. So the teachers are getting together and they have some hours if they're really breaking it down and getting ready for the fall. We have groups at the middle school looking at civics curriculum and diving into the ELA curriculum. We have many, I think we approved maybe 20 plus curriculum groups at the high school looking at everything from science projects to ELA and math, and it's very exciting when teachers are able to submit their proposals and they are approved by their principal. So everything that's being worked on is aligned with the school goals and the district goals and aligned with the standards, of course. For science, our new science coordinator is very busy already. She is offering a professional development for both third, fourth, and fifth grade, and it's to understand or unpack the first unit for each grade level, and several teachers have already signed up for that. She's also offering a science inventory and setup, so she's offering to go in and individualize with teachers and unpack the science curriculum and plan how it will fit in their classroom, because elementary teachers don't have a science lab. They have a classroom, and they have to have their wit and wisdom up, and they have to have math, calendar math up, and they have to have all kinds of things. So she is going in for teachers that sign up to really unpack the curriculum and make a plan of how to make it sustainable and work within their physical environment. And there's many teachers signing up for all of those already. And then Katie's offering in special education a course on understanding autism. I believe the BCBAs are running that. And then she has a consultant that comes in and working with the special education team chair for some training that as well. So our teachers are on vacation, but they are still working hard and learning, and it's wonderful to see. And for our kiddos, our summer learning program, similar to last year, Amy Natola is running it, doing a fabulous job with the math and literacy program. This is essentially a tier 2 instruction. So students were recommended for this program based on their benchmark scores. And it is to prevent regression and to support students that need that extra repetition and practice. They will receive both literacy and math instruction. It is also located at West Parish Elementary School. It's from 9 to 12, Monday through Thursday. It's a 5-week program. Last year, we had 97 students in the program. We have 125. I'm hearing maybe one might have dropped out, 124 to 125. Late breaking news, that students in grades 1 through 5 that are attending the program. You can see the team that's there. New this year, last year we had an EL teacher to support students, but in addition to that, we added an EL classroom for newcomers. So these are students that have like level 1 to 2 on the LEDA score, so they have low English, and they're specialized in a classroom to really gain their English skills. So that's an added benefit this year. And we are also collaborating with the YMCA. Not all students are able to do it. The YMCA has limited space for licensing, but there was a lottery, and 50 of the students go to the YMCA via bus after the program, and they spend the afternoon at the Y. We also have lunch provided through Open Door, just like Katie's program. And it's been being very successful.
The enrollment increase, is that due to there's an increase in need or just an increase of people taking advantage of it?
A little bit of people taking advantage of it, but we added that extra classroom as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Oh,
Did you have something else to say?
No.
Okay, knowing that we have this new East Veteran School going, is there any issues with, like, you know, or thoughts about, say, moving these programs? Seems like there's a lot of programs happening at West Parish.
Yeah.
Is it in your thoughts to maybe even move that over to the new school with greater capacity?
It could be a consideration. The benefit that we have with the special education program and this program in the same building is they share a nurse. They have transportation goes to one place.
Yeah. No, I'm just in general, like the whole entire concept of like summer learning and all these programs.
To spread it out to the new building is a possibility.
Yeah, just wondering.
Decision for next year is not, hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
Funding for next year has not been made yet, because this program is grant funded.
Okay.
And at the end of this meeting, I'm hoping you're going to approve the grant that is going to pay for it.
Yeah, so awesome.
But I think there is, as Amy just said, the real value in having all the programs at one place.
That's what I'm saying, I'm like.
But it could be at East Veterans instead of West
Yeah.
Parish, but having one place makes a lot of sense. But certainly now we'll have 2 schools that have the capacity to do them.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So. Oh, yeah.
And then at O'Malley, they have the O'Malley Academy, of course. But in addition to that, they have the Summer Boost, which is a program, it's a 4-week program, similar to elementary, where it serves rising 6th through 9th graders for students to get support in both ELA and math, and that's located at O'Malley, and it's from 8 to 1. And we have 4 ELA teachers for math and then some ESPs there to support that learning. They also receive the free breakfast and lunch from the open door. And then also going on at O'Malley is the O'Malley Academy, Summer Academy. Several opportunities there you can see where students can sign up for interest-based clubs or programs, and they're able to spend some time in O'Malley. This is used for all students, in particular those rising 6th graders. It's a nice introduction to the school. So there's a lot of opportunities for our middle schoolers as well.
And you'll see particularly the carpentry, advanced manufacturing, all part of continuing to make sure students know about our programs at school.
And I was able to go this morning with Maggie Rose for GF, and the kids were just so engaged in what they were doing. They were making lighthouses, the metal, and the advanced manufacturing, and using the tools that I'm not sure I would go, but clearly it's very safe what they were doing. But they were really engaged by it. So it was really great to see them in high school.
This is the 6th and 9th grade.
Yeah.
Great.
What's the moving up camp about?
Moving up camp would be 5th graders going into 6th grade. They go to be into O'Malley and get experience the school, and it also helps them make that transition into the school. So they do activities, team building, and get into, how to navigate the middle school, those things.
Yeah, try to relieve some anxiety. I know my son is gonna be like a little nervous about going to the next
Well,
level.
Look to sign up for that.
Yeah, I know. We got another year to,
Yeah.
for him to get used to the idea.
Right.
Okay, so 2 more things, JRTC update, so been some changes here, now just as a reminder, on April 12th, James Cook was here. And I gave an update on some successes, but also some challenges. And just remind you, at that point, we had low enrollment in 1 instructor. So because of that, the program was placed on administrative probation. At the same time, though, we're confident on a number of levels, making proactive outreach for instructor candidates, we're doing that, and recruiting in a variety of ways. Active and expanded recruitment of O'Malley students. There was also, wasn't our decision, but it was a system-wide decision with ROTC, shifts in uniform requirements. We thought that would loosening up those uniform requirements would also actually help recruit students in 9th and 10th grade. And then also as a backup plan, you remember, we talked about pursuing the Navy National Defense Cadet Corps. And that would be necessary if we couldn't get a second instructor and couldn't get enrollment up to about 80 students. The enrollment actually, the recruitment work has been going quite well, or was going quite well. And we're getting close to 80 students for next year. But then through another curveball, fortunately, head instructor, Math Sergeant Carcel DeVoe is moving on. He is resigning effective August 1st to move south with his wife, and which is really unfortunate. Master Sergeant has been a great member of our staff and our community in so many ways. So losing him is a little disappointment. And that also though puts the program up in the air for now. And so what we are doing, and we're working with the Marines closely on this, and we have to now shift our focus on hiring a new head instructor. We've gotten canvassing for receipt from the Marines. Vita Brini, the Director of Veteran Services, is helping us by reaching out to local veterans departments and also the 3 closest Marine bases for possible candidates. This does mean if we cannot get a instructor for the fall, that James Cook will be named as the administrator of the program, and that's really a formality because they need someone who's responsible for all the equipment. When naming James administrator of the program, he's taking responsibility for all the equipment that we have here, equipment, uniforms, That's just the stipulation they have. He's responsible for that. And then, program off to remain on administrative probation while we recruit a new head instructor. And then also second instructors at some point as well. We are continuing as a backup, really as a plan, is continuing to pursue the NNDCC program, the Navy program, that may come into play here. Not sure yet, so it's what the Marines certainly know, clearly for myself and James directly, because we've been talking quite a bit, is that, we are, JROTC program at Gloucester High is a really big deal. It's really important to this community. It has been, active in this community for decades upon decades. And so we want to continue. That, they're a great part of our school community in many, many ways. And we're doing the work to make sure we can keep it going. But there is a good chance that we will not be able to offer the classes this fall if we can be instructor. But doing everything we can to make sure that keeps up. Doesn't mean if that's not possible, then we'll continue to work to get an instructor. That's essential. So there are some challenges around people when they retire from the military often go south for some reason. As opposed to staying up in north.
I can think of a couple of.
I don't understand that, but anyway. So they often they're retiring from bases that are down there as well. So anyway, so it's not an easy challenge, but it's one that we're trying to remedy but no, I took it to work around.
Quick question, Ben, we on a separate track, are we, Navy National Defense Cadet Corps?
Yeah.
Does that also involves having some sort of leadership?
Yeah, we have to have an instructor. There's a number of advantages, not advantages, but positives about having the Navy program. One is it only requires one instructor. Okay. And that was helpful, Two, its curriculum is a little more closely aligned with our resources around here. The sea and ocean, being part of that, obviously, and also even pursuing career pathways as well. So that's a plus. So but we still need an instructor.
Yeah.
That's still.
Put it up in the field, you said, Coast Guard, Navy and Marines.
One would think.
Sorry, could you?
You said, the possible instructors,
Yes.
Navy, Marines and Coast Guard.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right now, we're currently just Marines.
No,
Navy too?
like Master Sergeant Rose, Navy. I mean, they can do a variety as well, but it does give us a little more flexibility. I just don't know the specific details of who can, who can't. But it does give us more flexibility on that as well. And so, so there's some curriculum advantages. There's some, just sort of place advantages. There's also just in terms of resource advantage as well. So that's not a small thing. It's a big thing. It's a little challenge we have, but we're really committed to program obviously that out. And looking for support, people ideas, recruitment, that sort of thing. So. Questions? So there are two more things to go, and we can do them in order you like. Next was the disposition of the contents of the two schools, and then my evaluation. I think I'll just continue on this. That's good? Okay, there you go. Awesome. I shared with you the disposition timeline. This hasn't changed in any substantial way. And then we went over again at BNF. So we're really here at June 28th, so at the bottom here. But all this stuff has already happened. I'll show you some pictures, and you have the inventory lists for both schools, with you. We'll get to those in a moment. We have to look over those. But we've done all the pieces on the principals going there. Principals identified a lot of items they could take. Those have been moved to the schools. So all the things that we wanted, that the schools wanted, have been moved out. Okay, we wanted or needed, had any need for. So all the things that schools needed, that we needed, have moved to other schools or out of the buildings. City department heads came in as well. And I don't know if those have been moved, but they've identified what they want, which I don't know. Purchasing is also identified anything that's above $5,000, and that can be like an individual item, like some refrigeration unit, or that could be like a combination of items like a whole set of desks, a whole set of chairs, that sort of thing, okay? I think that's done by 15 things across the two buildings that would be, and those will be up for auction. They'll also auction off things like, I mean, like I said, like classroom sets of desks or that sort of thing. I'm also gonna reach out to local school district superintendents, see if they need any of these things that we have, that sort of thing. So now we're here. So the city then takes over if you vote tonight to declare all the items surplus and no value to the schools, and the city takes over from here to do the auction, online auction. And then those items are removed as well. That auction is from a public auction site online. It's an online auction type of thing. Once that's taken care of and any items taken out, the one question has been the training event. One question has been like this: the auditorium seats at East Gloucester, those can be auctioned off in pieces or parts or all of them, that sort of thing. Bids on those as well. Once those pieces are removed, then around July 20th, you'll get a quotes from different, or bids rather, from different providers on what to do in terms of disposing of what's left. And it won't be that much stuff at that point, but that could be a person who, a company rather, who disposes them through landfill, or another company may propose to dispose them through some landfill, some recycle, some reuse, some donate. So we'll get, the city will get pricing for that for disposing of what's left. We will not do July 21st. You say remaining surplus items. We won't move them from St. Anne's to TGS. We will. That's been changed. Any left at St. Anne's will be taken by this. The person who's going to dispose of everything based on they just dispose of it after that. Again, the disposal could mean recycle, reuse, donate. That'll depend on what's left and what quotes the city gets. So I just want to show you steps from here. I sort of just described this already. Just so you know, some folks are asking about fixtures at East Gloucester. Fixtures and things that are attached, to the school are part of when the building is declared surplus. Okay? Any value, things like that, pipes or fixtures or what else we have, is when the building, the ETS building is declared surplus. You're just declaring tonight surplus the items within it, and you have the list of those. So this is what the classrooms is. I think these are all St. Anne's. You can see, they're cleared out substantially. There are no items of but there are desks and tables, as it says on the inventory. These are sorts of things that people, people or other school systems might claim. Well, often those school systems, they can be auctioned off. Things like you see the whiteboard there. Those are not going over to the school because we're getting new ones, but that might go. That might be one more thing that goes with individual to those. You can see again here on the right-hand picture, you have the crates that are all packed up as this classroom, and you see this in this classroom. There's just some chairs left. That's it. Okay. It's essentially all that's there. On the left, really the same things, sort of odds and ends, bits and pieces. An old office chair, and some and a few desks. Heater sets and problems there already. And then on the left-hand side, are the things that are being moved over to East Veterans. This is again one that's entirely cleared out, basically. And those are all things that we go over. One last one. This is, as you can see, chairs here, and those can be claimed by people either from the school department, or if anyone wants 20 student chairs at their home, they can do that too. Any questions about anything you see there? I will say one last thing on the inventory list. You see that there's some air purifiers. Yeah. Those will be taken by us and be used on the schools. So I saw the list this morning and asked Matt Christiana, we're already on top, we already know where we're going, but they're staying with us. So that's the only piece that we'll note there. Stacey Capone is in purchasing is a huge help on all this. Really making sure we're following the rules, also asking lots of questions with clarity on things, and also keeping a great job of keeping us informed, as well as the folks who are helping us solve the problem. I mean, there are big parts as well. Obviously. Good question.
So you wanted to declare
Yeah.
these items on these. for
Surplus.
Exemption of the.
Yes, we did, yeah, as surplus and no value to the school.
I move that we declare the items listed on these two documents presented today surplus
And of no value.
and of no value to the school districts.
Second.
Except for the air purifiers, which I was gonna ask you about. but you didn't. Okay,
So moved.
Second.
Oh, you already.
Okay, any discussion?
The only thing I'd add is that then allows the rest of the process to go forward with the other disposition of them in terms of auction and then ultimately, disposal or use. I guess I got this.
Mr. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Verda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson. Yes. Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
You want that list attached to the minutes?
Yes.
I don't need one.
that's fine. I'll give you one from Mark.
I have fresh.
I do want to thank a couple of folks here, obviously, not obviously, but Christy Lambert and Matt Busco, of course, are continuing great work. It's also two sort of herald the stars and all this is Amy Natola and Casey Hubney. Both Casey Hubney is a physical education teacher we'll be one of them at these veterans. She's been at veterans for quite some time. Amy Natola, who's sort of a speech pathologist, but also jack of all trades. What's that?
Teacher here.
She's our teacher of hearing impaired, but also jack of all trades. As you heard tonight, she's running our summer learning program at West Parish for K-5. Sorry. They've both been a really big help and support to the team at veterans in East Gloucester as they go through the process. They will continue to work with us in the summertime, developing things like the arrival dismissal plan, emergency plan, and sort of stuff. So just really want to just thank all four of those people, particularly Casey and Amy, who sort of are working a lot behind the scenes.
Good question. What do we see as a timeline for declaring East Gloucester school surplus?
So no real rush on that. Want to make sure we're rebuilding everything. So that's I would expect September.
Okay,
On that?
well, that's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
The last time we held on to the school, I think, for 5 years.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, that's that. I mean, September, I mean, it could be October.
So this year, maybe.
Yeah, nothing before September, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we haven't really discussed its exact date or that sort of thing on that, but.
But as an aside, because as Sam just mentioned to me, that the open space committee is ultimately, it's over. They had a meeting when I started to start the discussion about the East Gloucester site. But obviously, nothing happens until we declare surplus,
Right.
city council,
Right.
surplus. We're still unsure if they have to, because we're keeping the property. So I guess the council had to declare the building surplus, they do let us tear it down. Anyway, we'll work with Suzanne again.
I just want to get it in your hands so that
Oh, I do
we've
too.
done our part, that's all.
Yes. And others do as well.
Next item of business is the subcommittee report from the Building and Finance Subcommittee meeting of June 20th, 2023.
So you can turn it over to me, but I'm not gonna be long because we already discussed 99% of this. We discussed the budget, the transfers were on the consent agenda, the furniture we just did. We did not do the DPW MOA at our meeting. We got the O'Malley window project update from the superintendent. I think the only thing left is the community eligibility provision agreement food service. And we got a very quick report saying that we hope that Lunch is free again next year. We're anticipating that it's gonna be free. The district overall is 40% low income, so we're eligible for the free lunch. And the Plum has 30% itself, that's how they look at the district as a whole. We do have the CEP program, which we have to look at, do our reimbursements match expenses, so that's a consideration we have to look at if we go that route. Very quick conversation, didn't really amount to anything other than just to get an update that we anticipate that lunch will be free next year, so fingers crossed. And other than that, all other matters already discussed.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to the superintendent's evaluation.
We get the acceptance of the grant out.
I was gonna say, we
Oh,
do that.
sure, let's accept the grant.
Summer program already started, so.
Okay, under action, we have, I move that we accept the grant for the development and expansion of high quality summer learning in the amount of $50,000 to the Gloucester Public School District. Second. Okay. Moved and seconded, I guess we know all what it's going towards. That's great. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Minio.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Verga.
Yes.
Ms. Watson. Yes. Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
And Mr. Mormon.
Yes.
So I sent it to everybody, the consolidated version of excerpts from people's evaluations. I didn't put it all in the consolidated one, but so I'll go through that, but I just want to highlight consistent messages, just a few, that Ben has a very real human side to him. He's empathetic as a leader, he's a good listener, great sense of humor, and truly cares. I think it came through with everybody. There is faith in his confidence in all phases of his leadership, his ability to learn and grow in his position, and as we encounter new situations. And the last thing that everybody expressed was overwhelming confidence in you leading our district into the future, currently what's ahead. Excited to see what other great things that will happen in the district. So those are kind of some summary. I will say, I looked up the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education because I want people to understand that proficient is a very high bar, and this is the same rating scale that our educators across the state are evaluated on. So proficient, the definition is performance is understood to be fully satisfactory. This is rigorous, expected level of performance, demanding but attainable. And I remember when this system was put in place, everybody hammered home how difficult to get a proficient was. And that exemplary should not have been given out, I think, in the first. It was like, don't remember to anybody ever, forever. So exemplary performance represents a level of performance that exceeds the already high standard of proficient. A rating of exemplary is reserved for performance that is of such high level that it could serve as a model. And I think we'll see through some of these reviews that there are things Gloucester's doing that superintendent that we're looked to as pretty darn good in many ways. So, and I will give everybody an opportunity to say things at the end if I do not cover what point you wanted to make. So I think I'm going to go through this standards first, and then kind of the overall comments after that, so that we can talk about what the pieces are. So the first one is instructional leadership. And on instructional leadership, the overall ratings were 2 for needs improvement, 5 for proficient. And in the categories under curriculum, anybody want me to read through all this description?
No.
No? Okay, curriculum 7 rated proficient, instruction 1 rated needs improvement, 3 proficient, and 3 exemplary. Assessment 2 needs improvement, 4 proficient, 1 exemplary. Evaluation 2 needs improvement, 4 proficient, one exemplary, data informed decision making, one needs improvement, two proficient, and four exemplary. As I said, the overall ratings are two needs improvement, four proficient, and one exemplary. And just a few of the comments that were made. Mr. Lummis is very disciplined and sets the bar high for the entire district with regards to measurable assessment and instruction. I've come to appreciate his ability to stick to his long range vision and to hold people accountable to achieve that vision. Another comment, Superintendent Lummis sets a very high bar for himself and all staff. He and his leadership team are making great strides in all aspects of student engagement and learning. Presentations to the school committee are informative and highlight progress in areas for improvement. The collaborative approach to evaluating and selecting curriculum changes led by teachers have brought positive results. I look forward to continuing growth for our students and staff. Next one, Superintendent Lummis is well on his way to exemplary in this area. He and his leadership teams continuously review data to identify gaps in student learning with constant goal of improvement. It is very exciting to see new curriculum unleashed to our students across the grades, and enthusiasm from staff is beyond exciting and look forward to future data presentations to see student growth. It is comforting to know that decisions for student learning are made collectively without fear of making a mistake, knowing there's an opportunity to learn from something that doesn't work. Next standard is management and operations. 4 rated overall proficient and 3 rated exemplary. The pieces are environment, 5 proficient, 2 exemplary. Human resource management, 1 needs improvement, 5 proficient, 1 exemplary. Scheduling and management information systems, 6 proficient, 1 exemplary. Law, ethics, and policies, 4 proficient, 3 exemplary. Fiscal systems develops a budget that supports district vision, 4 proficient and 3 exemplary. Some of the comments, the budget process this year has been transparent and thorough. Mr. Lummis has kept the school committee, district staff, community, city council, and the mayor well informed during the building of the most recent budget. The budget is honest and needs-based while not losing sight of achievement and progress in light of skyrocketing cost increases. Next comment, Mr. Lummis certainly meets or exceeds all measurements as they pertain to management and operations. Our schools feel safe and resources are used in an appropriate manner to achieve district goals. Next one, the mark of a good executive leader is who they have chosen for support roles. During my initial tenure with the school committee, I have been concerned with turnover in key positions, especially assistant superintendent, food service director, and now middle school principal. While the world has turned upside down with respect to pandemic effects, it's understandable that individual staff have reevaluated life, blah, blah, blah. I need to actually put that in there. I'm optimistic that Mr. Lummis is fully capable of finding and recognizing talented professionals to further the school committee's vision and to execute its goals towards that effort. That's management. Family and community engagement. For overall, all 7 of us rated efficient. First category is engagement, 4 proficient, 3 exemplary. Shared responsibility, 7 proficient. Communication, 6 proficient, 1 exemplary. Family concerns, 2 needs improvement, 4 proficient, 1 exemplary. Comments on this, I've received feedback from parents who find Mr. Lummis is accessible and quick to listen to family concerns in a respectful way. Families feel understood and heard. There has been less need to communicate as regularly with families since the waning of COVID-19. I encourage Mr. Lummis to continue to find reasons to say hello to families via email or newsletter more regularly. Next comment, the addition of a communications coordinator to facilitate timely communication about what's happening in all of our schools has been a very positive development. But there is need for improvement district-wide on how much parents know about what is happening in schools and with their children. Last standard is professional culture. And the overall ratings are 4 proficient and 3 exemplary. First indicator is commitment to high standards, 3 proficient, 4 exemplary. Cultural proficiency, 1 needs improvement, 4 proficient, 2 exemplary. Communication, 1 proficient, and 6 exemplary. continuous learning, 6 proficient, 1 exemplary, shared vision, 3 proficient, 4 exemplary, managing conflict, 2 needs improvement, 3 proficient, and 2 exemplary. Few comments on this. I feel that Ben continues to move our district forward in positive ways. That said, there's a clear need for improvement in cultural sensitivity among staff, fosters diverse community with cultural, religious, and ethnic differences. GPS staff does not always respond to differences in ways that are caring, effective, and lead to our shared goal of improved sense of belonging. I hope that Ben will continue to lead our staff towards a much more careful attention to diverse traditions, holidays, and cultural sensitivities. Next comment is Superintendent Lummis fosters a shared commitment and environment of high expectations and student achievement, knowing he requires collaboration from Gloucester Public Schools district employees. He empowers teaching staff to implement new curriculum and other programs to raise the bar of educational opportunities, providing support for those that struggle the most. His relationship with the school committee is very transparent, open, and often challenges the boundaries we are comfortable in. Building the East Veterans School brought much conflict within our city, but through patience, understanding, and allowing the opponents to be seen and heard, a new educational institution is about to open, providing students with safe, state-of-the-art, modern facility where more teachers can now collaborate on a daily basis. I have seen the most growth from Superintendent Lummis in this area and impressed with his outcomes over recent years, most impressively this last year. So those are the standards, and a reminder, this is the same form that teachers use. So, and teachers don't have to sit here in front of us and the camera evaluation. And that would be the only thing I would change about the evaluation process. It's just how public it is. Documents fine, but sitting there must not be very, very fun. Okay, then we have assess progress towards goals. And I will read each goal. The first one is leading for the long term, building capacity and collaboration of the school and district leaders to focus on long-term priorities for improving student learning, instruction, academic achievement, professional development operations. The ratings are some progress, 1, significant progress, 1, met is 4, and 1 is exceeded. So those are that's the scale for that. Goal number 2, complete the development of and operationalize Gloucester Public Schools 3-year plan for ongoing improvement. All instructional, budgetary, and resource decisions should be guided by the priorities, goals, and actions of the plan for ongoing improvement. Integrate the goals and actions detailed in the plan for ongoing improvement into the daily work of our schools and departments. Ratings are 1 is some improvement, significant progress is 1, met is 4, and 1 is exceeded. Goal number 3 is building the East Veterans Elementary School. Continue progress of bringing the school to substantial completion on budget and on schedule. Significant progress is 1, that is 2, and 4 rated exceeded. Facilities and capital planning, a multi-year capital and facilities plan is in place that is revised annually and allows the city, Department of Public Works, and schools to effectively maximize facility lifespans by maintaining building infrastructure through regular maintenance, repairs, and upgrades. 1 is needs improvement, 5 is, wait, sorry, I'm reading from the wrong scale, sorry. 1 is significant progress, 5 is met, and 1 is exceeded. Make sure I have these titles crossover. Operations supports the ongoing improvement in the use of regular and documented systems across the operational areas of budget and finance, human resources, safety and security, and communications. 2 is significant progress, and 5 is met. So those are the assessments of goals. So the overall rating, based on all the standards, is 6 proficient and 1 exemplary. And then I pulled pieces from everybody, so there's comment from everybody, but if there are things you'd really want to say yourself in your own words, don't, everything else at the end, you may do so for the record. Superintendent Lummis is doing an admirable job leading our school district. His commitment to the constant challenge to improve teaching and learning should be applauded, recognizing that a school should not be defined by test scores alone. Knowing the diversity of our student body consists of challenges, including but not limited to language barriers, disruption in the students' education, homelessness, cultural differences, and more. I am always impressed with Superintendent Lummis's thoughtful manner to seek reasoning behind a complaint or demand while seeking the point of compromise for a resolution. He displays exceptional sound judgment, usually after consulting and listening to the concerns of staff members. There are very impressive happenings within our school district, and I truly look forward to the next few years to celebrate the successes which are about to emerge with great work going on under the leadership of Superintendent Lummis within Gloucester schools. Next, Ben Lummis is a compassionate and effective leader. He guided Gloucester through the pandemic, and he continues to lead our district with a steady hand, working to improve curriculum, social emotional learning, and staff support and training while avoiding too many shiny objects along the way. I completely support Ben Lummis and his vision for our schools. Any lower ratings in this year's evaluation simply reflect the turn we are all taking to move away from pandemic while dealing with the increased needs it has caused and revealed. I know that under his leadership, we will move towards positive, broad-reaching improvements for every student and family in the district. Next comment. Certainly comfortable rating Superintendent Lummis between proficient and exemplary, leaning towards exemplary. As school committee members, we see what's presented to us, and Mr. Lummis puts together informative and pertinent material on all school matters that serve the community and district well. He's a tireless worker and one that leads by example. He sets a standard for all people involved with Gloucester Public Schools that is important to emulate and maintain. I appreciate the value he puts on education and on each student being a welcome and valued member of our educational community. Next, Mr. Lummis is a big picture thinker that doesn't get distracted by shiny things. He keeps his eye on the horizon while furthering the district goals. He is well spoken and to the point while being compassionate and at times humorous. At community meetings, he provides pertinent information, adding important context when answering the questions. Mr. Lummis has a strong ability and willingness to delegate appropriately. He surrounds himself with trustworthy individuals and allows staff to answer committee questions when he realizes they can provide the best answer. We do have challenges ahead and much work still to do, but with Ben aboard, I'm confident our district will continue to produce superb graduates that better our community and the world at large. Next, Mr. Lummis appears to be very aware of the needs of the district as evidenced by the plan for ongoing improvement and the topics presented as evidence in the monthly leadership meetings. I have no doubt with another year of more typical day-to-day operational challenges versus crisis management, more progress will be made by the superintendent on instructional leadership in both collective and individual supervision and support of leadership staff. And finally, words that immediately come to mind regarding Superintendent Lummis's leadership style, caring and compassionate, which he shows for each and every student in Gloucester Public Schools and drives his work on instruction and support. He talks transparently about challenges and celebrates achievements with joy. He knows many of the students by name because he's in our schools regularly and engages with them. Superintendent Lummis has set a very high bar for himself and all staff and works tirelessly in his role as superintendent. The plan for ongoing improvement details the thoughtful work that is ongoing around the district at all grades levels as staff has contributed to raising the bar for meeting the educational and social and emotional needs of our students. I'm confident that under Ben's leadership, our district will continue to strengthen and excel. So that's just consolidated. And I welcome everybody, anybody, if you feel like you want to expand or say anything.
Basically crawling out of the.
Now is the time, and you don't have to if you feel like you said it in your review and I captured what you wanted me to capture.
I just want to say, thank you for that, because I think that excellent consolidation, probably one of the best ones we've ever had. So kudos to you and all the work.
Everything very thoughtfully done.
Yeah, it was good. I think I don't really want to add anything, but I just want to say, as far as more comments to your evaluation, I'm just very impressed with the amount of work that gets done from you and your office. And we have a small district, like you don't have a lot of staff, like someone that's in charge of communications only, that you can say, okay, I'm just gonna delegate that and walk away from it. You're actually doing the work, right? And together, both of you, I mean, I could give you the same evaluation. Your hands are in every aspect of this district. So it's hard to just, when you're trying to rate whether you're proficient or exemplary or needs improvement, it's difficult because you're very good at what you do, and I just can't imagine how well this district would be if we had more of you, right? So that you, because you have so much going on.
Slowly, so I can't anymore.
So I think when you're in a smaller district, and I mean staff wise, right? It's difficult to evaluate you because you can't take the credit for those that you lead. I mean, you can for some, but you're just responsible for so much. But I would just love to see your student growth on it, your superintendent growth on a chart, because your trajectory is in the right direction. Considering you've only been a superintendent for 3 years, 4 years, you know, during a pandemic and everything else.
Does that your count? I guess it does. Right, your count is like 4.
Yeah, that kind of. Definitely counts.
I mean, I was one of those in training where they said you don't give anyone exemplary. Maybe the superintendent that's been around for 25 years, it's the role model for all superintendents out there. And so if I even try to give an exemplary, I'm like, oh my God, am I able to do this, right? Should I be doing this? Because we have to reflect on our teaching staff getting evaluated in the same way, and we want to think that they're all exemplary as well. So it's kind of like you have to pick and choose the strengths there. And just very impressed overall, and I enjoyed doing this evaluation for you this year.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work and your team, right? You're a team.
It's team. It's a team.
So you know that.
Yes.
So that's good.
Huh? Gonna be funny, you know.
Please.
I feel like I'm at a funeral. Just echoing what Dennis said, I think it's okay, you know. Common thing is, don't give anybody exemplary, but I think it's okay to give people exemplary. I love people to do their jobs well. I love to see people do things really well. And then I appreciate that. And I certainly feel that way about Ben and the work that you've done and your team. I think that the team is, good leaders always surround themselves with really good people and people that also do great work. You've done that. I'm just so positive about the direction of the Gloucester Public Schools, the direction that we're going, and the people involved in the overall system and with your leadership. So, and I just appreciate you as a guy and a man, and you've done a wonderful job. So keep it up.
Thank you.
I think I only chatted with you maybe a couple of times before I got sworn in as mayor, you know, because I wasn't involved with city government until we came along. And thankfully, because I was involved in COVID too. But it's not about me, it's about you.
Planning your part.
And but you know, I've been learning on the job, and you know, I've appreciated getting to know you and working with you. And I think our schools are in really good shape, you know, that there's always room for improvement in every aspect of every part of our lives, but we are headed in the right direction. There's obvious progress that's been made in 4 years you've been here, and I see more progress on the horizon. It's all because of you and the people you bring in behind you, and you know, the team effort that's happening right across the board. So thank you.
It's only been 3 years.
3 years.
Feels like
It's a leap year.
5 or 6. Thank you, Mayor. It's been a pleasure working with you. As you know, I really enjoy working with your team. You have a great team as well, and I never for a moment take it for granted that the schools in the city or schools in town, you know, just get along as well, work as well as we do. It doesn't happen. It happens the other way in a lot of places, and so it's a big deal. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I mentioned this to Ben individually earlier, but when we were doing interviews, all of us asked you if you were going to move to Gloucester. We put a lot of pressure on you, I think.
Couldn't really say no to the process. I get it.
But not only have you moved to Gloucester, I don't know if any of you know, Ben ran the 5K, the Fiesta 5K, and
Second
twice,
year.
second year in a row, and walked in the entire St. Peter's parade holding an oar. I didn't see him, my husband pointed him out, I'm sad that I didn't see him, but,
Don't forget the lobster.
I would say Ian signing up for the lobster trap.
Okay, so I'm saying that because in this community, and I'm sure in others, but particularly in Gloucester, it means a lot to show up and be a part of this community in a real meaningful way. And you have done that. You've shown up in the community, but you've also been very accessible to families, been a good listener to families, and your door's always open. I've heard people say like, they've gone out of their way in that office to make sure that we can meet them, right? Like offering us multiple times to make sure that we can meet with him and have a conversation with him. And that approachability, and that sort of like community player just goes a long way in this meeting. And I appreciate that.
And everyone knows, and I say whenever I can, that Fallis community is a great place to be, to work, to live, to be part of the community, and so it's real joy.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to what Sam was saying. It's like beyond this evaluation in your job as superintendent, you are, seemingly becoming a Gloucester resident, I'll just say Gloucester Park. Is there like a word for somebody from Gloucester, right?
At least 40 more years and forward generations.
Yeah, I mean, like, Gloucester is a very accepting place, and I think like anyone from Gloucester who sees someone who chooses, like coming from out of Gloucester, coming into Gloucester and choosing this as their home, we respect that, and you have a lot of respect for the community as a whole, the whole entire, Gloucester experience. You seem to be owning it, and that goes a long way to, people accepting you as a superintendent, and realizing, you're not just here to do the job, you want to be part of the community. So that's something I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone else in the community does.
You walk the walk.
I know, that sure really want this call.
My family asked me, my siblings said, did you walk the pole? And I said, no, I'm gonna wait till I'm older so I can really hurt myself. I said,
Yeah.
And I'll just close by saying, I am just always amazed at your command of just every piece. Your job is a very big job. And there's so many things that you just stay on top of, and even though someone else may be doing it, you clearly know exactly what it's expected, and can speak to it if they're not in the room. All sorts of things, grease traps, and you can really like talk up a storm about things that who would know that you should know those things, right? There's just some things, but I just have enjoyed having you as our superintendent, because I just see this this person that has embraced our schools from day one. I mean, I through the interview process, just the care of which you talked about, the importance of each student, learning the way they need to learn. It came through, and it's continued, in every aspect of what you do.
Okay, thank you, folks. Folks mentioned that I'm a good communicator and writer and sort of stuff, and I say, like, the comments that you put and that you read, Kathy, are the same way. I mean, well written and really say a lot. So thank you. I was talking to Mike Gaffney earlier today, or maybe yesterday, and he knows he's covered cities and towns, a lot of different ways, and it's like, Ben, there's no other position that I can think of that has a public evaluation process like this. I don't think the superintendent of schools, right? Which is mildly uncomfortable, for the record. But I really do appreciate how open and honest the folks are, how concrete, specific on the things that I know we can do better, but also just recognizing the work that I'm doing. Hopefully we should read this before I go to bed most nights. It'd be helpful. It's a reminder, but as I've said before, it's a joy to be here. It's a lot of work, obviously, but it's the right work for me. And I hope, and by the sounds of it, seems like it's the right work for the district and the schools, and that I appreciate it. It's on I just really appreciate you both being open and honest about it, about my work. It means a ton. You know, I will say this is, when putting together the evidence and documentation, I do think that this has been a pretty remarkable year, and we've together accomplished a whole ton. You know, the plan of chronic improvement is not even a year old, you know, and you know, the attendance zones and then the school building, and that doesn't even begin to talk about the curriculum and sort of stuff, but you guys are great partners in that. I just appreciate being here in Gloucester and working for this community, and with this community. I just think it's a place that really cares a ton, and I take that seriously, as I think you know. Part of taking it seriously is knowing that we got more work to do. You know, we saw tonight, Amelia needs to, Amelia, you know, really it's working on and needs to continue working and getting better. We've got to make sure, as I said earlier, that all our students really know that they belong in our schools, all of our students, that they're really engaged. And that means that, you know, they need to make sure that our educators and staff need to make sure that our kids know they care about them. They do, obviously, but every kid needs to know that, because then those kids will really learn well. And that's a place we need to continue our work on. And I'm really hoping, as someone said tonight, that there'll be just sort of the standard management leadership challenges this upcoming year, because we do need to, you know, coming out of the last few years now can really, you know, focus even more directly on things that will make, you know, learning and academic achievement really happen. And they happen when kids are really taken well care of and really loved. And we're all capable of that, and I think we all want to do it. And so there's more and more good things to come, which I'm excited about. So, thank you very much for tonight. For your support.
See new goals and all
No, yes, I know.
But she's
December.
new goals.
Goals in August, you got it.
Okay, someone want to make a motion to approve the superintendent's consolidated evaluation? Go ahead, Rich.
Mr. Vinias.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Neighbor.
Yes.
Ms. Watson. Yes. Chairperson Clancy.
Yes.
Mr. Melvin.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh,
no, we have these.
there's an East Gloucester update. There's nothing to talk about, right?
Furniture delivered?
Yeah, I haven't heard about that, but I think it was supposed to be, I'm sure it was. No, they just plug it away.
She told me know everything.
I didn't check on it.
It's been a big issue, by the way.
No,
Just wanna make sure it's there.
no, there's, you know, nothing of, you know, keep on working things. I mean, they were working really hard, really fast to get this thing done.
Trees around, plantings.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten.
It's been the 6 years on, like, that's what, August was it, or?
No, I think September, I'm not sure, but we'll get occupancy with the temporary switchgear, no problem. But no, they are meeting, you know, and so June 30th, you know, substantial completion around the corner. Yeah, so all happening on time, under budget.
And the last thing I have for business is to refer the superintendent's salary to personnel.
Maybe we can do it July 19th.
We have a meeting in July.
No, personnel, because, we have,
Well, there's some negotiation.
the negotiating team,
Well, that's their fault.
no, but we could,
Did do it.
this is personnel.
Me, Kathy,
Laura.
Yeah, so if you were available on July 19th, well, we can talk schedule later, but there's, do it on the day.
What's the committee you on?
Programs.
Oh, okay. Is that me?
We met, yeah,
Maybe we should throw O'Malley to vote.
It was already on there.
Radar. Happens in the program curriculum. The highlight. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ms. Minio,
Yes.
Ms. Prince. Yes. Dave Barda,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Jefferson Clancy. Yes. And Mr. Holland.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Oh my God. A little punch.